Let's go.
First you're Mario, and then you're Bill Murray.
Bill Murray?
Steve Zissou.
Oh, Sisu.
Sisu.
Wow. Ba-boom
Welcome. Oh my gosh.
What?
Let me start. I'll wait. Welcome back to the
Hold on.
Janchi.
Wait.
Just gonna restart it.
You can just cut it out. It's only 30 seconds. Oh, you're going to restart the thing. Okay, my bad.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show.
I know, that did sound like a song. I haven't done an intro in a while, so I am one of your hosts, Nathan Nowak, along with Patrick Armstrong and KJ Roelke. How are you guys? Nice silence.
I am good.
The way you said,
Don't
how are
answer
you
all at
guys?
once.
I expected you to say, how are you guys doing? And then doing never came. So I was like, oh, I guess that was the end. So
That was the end.
doing less than stellar. I'm sick. I'm getting over a sickness. It's not bad enough to keep me out of work, but it is bad enough to make me miserable while I do anything. And I haven't been sick in like years. So I'm just like, it's real unfortunate. So,
Yeah,
but
I was gonna
otherwise
say,
I'm doing all right. Mentally,
It's
I'm
usually
good.
my family that's sick, so
That's true.
knock on wood, yeah.
Nope. Sarah was sick.
You
and
don't
she gave
sound
it to
sick.
me.
Yeah, I was going to
So
say, you didn't
I
sound sick.
feel sick.
Yeah. You feel sick, though. Yeah, that sucks.
That does
Sorry.
suck. Sorry
Hope you feel
for
better soon.
you not feeling good.
Yeah, I
fine.
know. Are you sick, Patrick?
I am not
You-
sick.
Are you getting a lot of sleep?
I mean, I get adequate
Are you
sleep.
stocking up on sleep?
Exactly.
Is what
it's
he's
like
saying.
it's like hibernating, getting
Storing
ready.
your
Yeah.
sleep tokens for the winter of the
Yeah.
birth of your baby.
Yeah. I mean, when this episode comes out, I should be a dad. There should be a baby. So I saw you
Dum,
said,
dum, dum.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
as of this recording, we just had today our 37-week, 6-day appointment. So
Wow.
essentially 38 weeks. And Emily is
Yep.
beyond over this, ready to
I'm
go.
sure.
And
That last month. Oh,
Well,
I
she
remember.
she asked about induction, and
Uh-huh.
essentially 39 weeks you can do it pretty safely. And so I think as long as everything's okay next week, I think we might be heading into that process. Maybe just 1 week earlier. So we might be having a January baby.
Oh, she's like very done with it.
Oh, very done.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I
Don't blame her.
remember.
Don't
Yeah.
blame her.
Neither
To
do
be
I.
honest,
remember
do not blame
those-
her.
Those, I mean, Allison had a lot of sleepless nights and some heartburn and just the standard
Yeah.
back aches and swollen feet and stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of
That sounds
times
like
where
my
I was just
symptoms.
like, I hope it comes, the baby comes out soon and
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, that's that last month. I can't even imagine. So
I can't even imagine.
Emily,
either.
good on you. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Read a lot of good. I mean, did a lot of research today about like what it is. And basically everybody says, there's obviously always a risk for something, but
Mhm.
pretty much if you're ready to go and they say you're ready to go for it. Everyone's like, I'm getting this damn thing out of me. So I'm like, all right, let's do it.
You're like, can we hurry up the miracle of life, please? I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we even went as far as to look at restaurants when we were in LA at the time. There was like restaurants that supposedly had miracle salads that supposedly like,
Oh, really?
for some reason, if you ate the salad, it induced birth or something like
I
that.
didn't look up any like
yeah.
induction speed up methods like accelerants,
Mm.
but I did see like when I was Googling, like I did see that pop up as like a question in the little drop down menus.
Can you eat something? Yeah, I mean, I know they
I
talk
feel
about
like spicy food is the most famous.
Yeah, but that just gives you heartburn.
Emily doesn't like spicy food.
I was like, just give her some jalapeno poppers and then pop out the baby.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, jeez.
Then you can call the baby my little jalapeno.
We've never went through it before, so that might be how it works. I don't know.
For the record, you should not call your child my little jalapeno. That feels racist.
It does feel pretty racist.
Really bad ways.
I called my baby a gherkin.
A gherkin? I don't know what that is.
It's a baby pickle.
A baby pickle.
Yeah. Little, like the cocktail pickles? Little cocktail pickles? Yeah, it's gherkin.
Yeah, I like those. So this is early parenthood hour with the Janchi Boys. For anybody new joining us here and is still listening 3 minutes into this
almost
podcast.
5 minutes in.
Almost 5 minutes into this podcast. We appreciate you. For anybody joining us for the very first time, Janchi means to feast or to banquet in the Korean language, and that is what we do here on this show. We feast and banquet at the end of every episode on a snack or a drink. But before we get to that, we feast and celebrate our stories and our shared experiences as Korean American adoptees and talk about everything that goes along with it. So that's what we do. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out like the most succinct way to explain it. And I feel like 2 or 3 episodes ago, KJ, you did a really good job of defining it. And I'm like, I need to memorize what you said and say that every time.
I feel like what you were saying was good. And then you trailed off and made it long.
I did trail off.
And then you added a qualifier to make it longer.
Yeah. I've been Midwestern goodbying so hard recently. It's like, I hate it. I've been so mad at myself. I'm like, stop talking. And I'll stop talking now.
My wife's family, they are the queens of the Midwestern goodbye. It's I and my sister-in-law's fiance are always like, okay, bye. And then we head out the door.
Smart.
And they will stay and talk for like another hour. I'm like, this is a lot.
That's why I've been mad at myself, because I feel like the conversation has clearly reached the end and like we have said goodbye. And then for whatever reason, I say something stupid and then like we keep talking and I'm like, what did I do?
It's not even that the conversation reaches the end. It's like it ramps up a new level. And they're like, all right, we're going to leave now. And then like, what? So speaking about conversations ramping up a new level, I cannot wait to share this interview that we just had with Cosette Eisenhauer Epp. Her official last name is Epp. We get into it at the very top. You'll hear it. But it was a really, really good episode. And we talked it was like easily 50 minutes. And then I was like, oh, shoot, it's been 50 minutes. We should probably think about the timing.
Yeah.
And there was so much more we could have talked about, I know. So I had other questions, but I was like, no, we're already reaching that cap. So
yeah, I feel like she shared a lot and took each one of the questions that we did ask in really cool directions. And I definitely think it's an experience that we have not necessarily had in the show very often. If at all, I would say this specific one. Mm-hmm. And I was just really appreciative of everything that she shared with us. And I'm excited to share it with everybody listening. So
yeah, 100%. So without further ado, here is that interview. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Janchi Show. It's the interview portion. We're here with a very exciting guest and friend, IRL, Cosette Eisenhauer Epp. Cosette.
Hey, guys.
Hyphenating it.
Cosette EE in the building.
I'm doing good.
I only qualify with the maiden name because you literally just got married. And I don't even know if you've had time to make a name change legal. But yeah, how are you? Welcome to the show. How are you feeling at this moment in time?
Thanks, guys. But no, my DMV appointment's in March. So I set that up before I got married because I heard America takes a little long on that. But I'm doing good. Life post-marriage, I guess, is kind of just hit and just running again, with life. So yeah, I started my master's this week. So just going and going and going. But the honeymoon was sweet of just having a break and a rest in life. So yeah.
Well, congrats on beginning the master's program. I saw the LinkedIn announcement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Where did you honeymoon at?
Durango, Colorado.
Ooh,
Oh,
pretty.
I think that's on the cards for me this summer.
What is in Durango?
In Durango, they have like the Silverton train that we were supposed to go on, but it broke 30 minutes on us being on it. But we went to like the Durango Hot Springs. We stayed at like the Strater Hotel, which is like a historic hotel. It was kind of just like a small little town with like a bunch of different coffee shops in it. And we're both home buddies. And so it was nice not having to have to plan something every single day.
Just a new coffee shop to try every day.
Yes.
It's interesting to think about how when I was growing up, there was one diner that had the coffee, maybe two. Maybe there were two restaurants, and now there's just coffee shops everywhere.
Yeah, there was no Starbucks back then, right?
No Starbs.
Yeah, very interesting.
It is odd to think of a time
Pre-Starbucks.
before Starbucks. Yeah,
It is.
just because it's so ubiquitous. Obviously, it existed, but yeah, Starbucks killed the American diner. Okay, well, anyways,
Classic.
before we get too far along with just general friendship, we're gonna officially kick off the interview the way that we always do. Cosette, please, in as much or as little detail as you would like, please tell us your story.
Yeah. So, I was adopted from China at 14 months old. I was adopted from Zhejiang, Guangdong, China, so like southern China, pretty much. It's Guangdong's the province that surrounds where Hong Kong is. For those that don't know geographical where that is. So a part of my adoption story before I was adopted was what we know from what they've given us was I was abandoned at 2 days old. And then I was brought to an orphanage, and then I became a failure to thrive baby within like 3 months of being in the orphanage. And so I got put into a foster family at 3 months old until I was adopted when I was 14 months old. So I was in a foster family for like 11 months. Then was adopted to a white couple that lives in Texas, and I've lived in Texas ever since that. So I have an adoptive brother who's also adopted from China, but he's adopted from northern China. And so there's been like a lot of different, so like growing up for me, adoption was never a taboo subject in the household. So my parents always, or at least my mom a lot of the time, tried to create the conversation about adoption when I was younger, like always brought it up, was willing to talk about it. When I was younger, she realized I stopped talking about my foster family, my birth parents. And so my mom did a little activity, which kudos to her, because I probably would never have thought about this if I was an adoptive parent, if I'm being honest. Did a little activity, and it was a heart and then little cutout hearts. And so on the hearts, I wrote down what was in my heart. And she kept doing that. And so I wrote what I would put in my heart. My mom realized I never put my birth parents or foster parents in there. And she was like, well, what about your foster parents? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I have room for that. Like, I guess my 3-4-year-old self didn't realize that, like, I could have more than I could think in my heart, if that makes sense. Like, nothing has to be replaced. So my parents were very, they chose neighborhoods and schools and things like that based off of how diverse it was. I never lived in a neighborhood that was white. It was always a diverse neighborhood just because that's something my mom said that she always wanted, which as I grew up, I didn't realize. Growing up, I realized what she meant by that. But whenever I was a kid, it was like we lived in like the neighborhoods we lived in and stuff. I was like, well, none of my friends from school live here. Like, why isn't it like that. But I was always a transfer student too, so that didn't necessarily help. But growing up, my parents, they tried bringing the Chinese culture as much as they could into the house, which was when I was 5, and then when I was in junior high, and then once in high school, we hosted an exchange student from China for a full year. And then the one from
KJ was, I saw him like looking, and I was also having the same thought of like, they only did Chinese culture stuff
I was
at
like,
5 junior
so they
high.
only
No.
celebrated like
high school,
like Chinese
but it was
New
because
Year,
they
like,
had the
Yeah.
a year of Chinese exchange student. That
Doing the
makes
same
total sense.
mental math. Yeah.
That's why I was laughing. I apologize.
No, it's all good. No, but we had the exchange students specifically live with us, but we did like Chinese New Year, things like that, going to KJ, you might know about like the Dallas Crow Museum had Chinese New Year things every single year there. And so my mom and I would go all the time. And so we had an exchange student. The exchange student I had when I was 5 ended up being like my big sister. I mean, I was 5, she was 17. And so that was one of my first big, like, oh, there's like someone else living in my house that's not white. And she has always been like such a dear friend. Her parents, when we went to adopt my brother, her parents were in the government and they found who my foster family was. And so when I was 7 or 8, we got to go to China to adopt Daniel, but I also got the opportunity to meet my birth parents then. And then pretty much just grown up knowing always I was adopted, just because it was never a taboo subject in the household. And then grew up going to different like heritage camps, like China camps, things like that. So, yep.
Your story is really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think it's like for anyone who doesn't live in Texas, and especially anyone who doesn't live in like a large Texas city, you definitely have an idea of who Texans are. And what was interesting to me was, even though I live here and I think that I'm good at thinking in complex additive terms, your story, I was like, oh, your parents are not how I expected. It was just like nothing about your story was how I expected it to go. And I really love, like, I'm over here just been like, you're like, oh yeah, my mom was like, let's do a heart and let's figure out an age appropriate way to explain that love is additive and that there is in fact room for everything that makes you who you are. And that's so lovely. And I'm over here being like, oh yeah, wait a minute. I had to like check myself. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess I'm curious, like, what, I know that you had Chinese exchange students, and you did maybe more than celebrate some Chinese things at 3 points of your life, but were there recurring Chinese cultural celebrations in your home, and what was it like experiencing that with your family?
Yeah, so Chinese New Year was always like the bigger thing that we always did every single year. And we still do it now. So as we got older, my mom bought a hot pot. And so we do hot pot every single year together. And my mom, so my brother and I are on very 2 different sides with how comfortable we are about talking about our adoption story. And I think for me, growing up with that was very difficult. And so it's always been we're doing Chinese New Year stuff. We'd love for you to join, but if you don't feel comfortable doing it, we understand. I think my brother did every single year, but there might have been a couple years where he just didn't join. But we do like a hot pot. We invite friends over. My mom makes it fun. She gets like the whatever the year is and gets like masks for us to have. Just like making it fun, really just talking about like when we have friends over that aren't necessarily like used to it, my mom takes the time to kind of explain what it is, why we're doing it. And so I think Chinese New Year for us has always been one of the bigger like Chinese celebrations that we do. But then I know for the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival, there's FCC, so Families with Children Adopted from China in North Texas, always does like some sort of like mooncake-esque type of thing. And so growing up when I was a kid, we always went to that just because that was one of the ways where I could get in touch with more adoptees that were maybe my age, that it was really just like a time for us just to like have fun together. And so there's a group of 9 or 10 of us that were all adopted, different agencies, but we were all a part of FCC North Texas growing up, and all the same age. So we would do like regular American New Year together, Chinese New Year, and like get together 3 or 4 times of the year on top of going to Tulsa, Oklahoma for China camp. And so for Heritage Camp. So off and on, we had that like every single year. It just depended on who knew how much everyone in the family was going to be involved, just based off of their comfortability with it, in regards to like my brother and I. So
sure. I think what's so fascinating to me, and I guess I'll call it refreshing, is to hear an adoptee experience at home that is not like wildly problematic, even if it was a positive experience. It's like you have a lot of cultural appreciation within your home, as opposed to, at least from my perspective right now, what would be considered appropriation. You know, like I feel like we've heard stories where adoptive parents try to infuse culture, but it's more appropriative than it necessarily is appreciative. And then there's a whole dynamic there. And I think it's just refreshing to hear you share about how your mom like really worked to try and bring that appreciation into the home. And then also how you navigated that with your brother in terms of having wildly different experiences, but being like, you know, if you are open to this, it's here, it's there for you. If not, that's totally okay too. I think that's just, again, really refreshing. You wrote in your form that your mom did, let me just look it up real quick, that your mom had went through like the process of kind of understanding adoption from maybe like an adoptee's perspective a little bit, or did a lot of like education prior to adopting in the first place. I was wondering if you had any conversations like growing up about that particular process for her and how that helped kind of like influence the way that you would then navigate this experience for yourself.
Yeah, so honestly, growing up, I really didn't think twice about it because I don't think I realized until maybe high school that my experience with adoption was very different than others. Just because in the group of 10 of us, the other co-founder of Navigating Adoption, like we just always talked to each other about the experiences, and they were both very similar. And so growing up like that, it was very much like, wait, whenever I got to a certain age, I was like, wait, not everyone has this. And so I really didn't think twice about it. And then I started asking my mom, like, so why did you do all of this? And I don't remember who she said, but someone suggested that she talk to the generation of adoptees above us, and just ask them what they wish their parents did that they didn't have. Which I was like, I don't know. My brain, when she said that, was kind of like curious how she navigated those conversations, but haven't really dig deeper into how she actually did those conversations. And I know my mom's going to be listening to this podcast because she listens to it. So maybe I'll get the answer after.
Shout out Cosette's mom for listening to the show.
Cosette's mom, come on the show.
Well, I commend your mom for all of that. I think that's great. Yeah, I was curious to Patrick's question as well, because both you and I were adopted through the Dillon Agency, and I had a little bit different experience. Not to say that my parents were great about raising me, but I don't think they had the education or maybe any literature even to move into that area. And I was wondering, when you were talking to your mom about that, did she have any guidance from Dillon, or did you ever, other than going to the camps themselves that were hosted by them?
I think that she said that the social worker kind of suggested it. And the social worker that helped with the adoption process for us has been apparently a dear friend to us. Didn't know that. My mom's like, oh yeah, she keeps asking about you. Like they're Facebook friends. I like interviewed her apparently for like I don't know, but I think she came to my wedding shower. So I guess they're really good friends. But
all right.
My mom said someone from Dillon suggested that they like educate themselves about it. But now Dillon's closed, so there's no ongoing on that one.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Dillon.
Yeah, I know we've talked a little about it on the side, but how has that been going? Have you been navigating that, talking with other Dillonites or
Dillonites?
I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like a biblical people.
It does.
Delanians.
Kind of. I mean, when we had the DFW harvest, what did we call it, KJ?
I called it the Harvest Hoedown, but it's Asian.
Yeah, that one.
I knew it was. That name will never leave my head. Rent free in my brain.
It's the only joke that I'm like truly proud of.
There were 2 other adoptees there that we ended up meeting like 2 weeks after Dillon announced it. And so I knew when I got there, we would all be able to talk about it, about Dillon closing and everything. I think for me, it didn't hit me until like a week later, things where I could finally process my emotions and thoughts about it. I think it was difficult because it was so abrupt. And I felt like, I was like, that's the start pretty much of my whole entire adoption process. Like, what do you mean they're closing? And so I had to like realize that just because Dillon wasn't closing, that's not where the start of my adoption identity was. Like my adoption identity wasn't closing because of that. I think that where I was the most frustrated with it was the fact we had to pay $50 to get our documents.
Yeah.
And you could do it only by December 31st of 2023.
Right before they closed.
And let's just say with all the wedding stuff, I completely forgot to do that. But my parents have kept all my documents and everything, and I've always had free range to them. I just also wanted documents in case those documents like got caught on fire or something. And so I think that was the part I was the most upset with, was because I was like, we didn't get the choice of being adopted, but we're having to pay for all the information about us that we should have the right to. And so I think with the Dillon, all of that, that's truly where I was just the most frustrated with, just because I'm like, that's not okay for us to have to pay for it. Because financial aspects on things for people, like some people might not be able to pay the $50 and they might have never been able to see their paperwork or documents or adoption files and stuff. And because Dillon's like, oh, you don't get it anymore after the 30th, they're never going to get it. So
yeah, like how many people didn't even get the notice that there was this quick deadline? And then they're like, oh, well, I guess I can't even apply for this now because it's January 2024.
Yeah, there was someone, because I posted on the adoption account about Dillon closing, and I had someone comment and be like, I had no idea they were closing. Thank you so much. So my brother can get his documents. And I'm like, what? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I mean,
wild.
not everyone gets the newsletter or follows the website. I mean, yeah, there had to have been, and probably still is, people who are like, wait, what? It's closed? And so
that's true.
But
I would wonder how many people don't know still.
Oh, I'm sure a lot. But and the fact that, of course, the thing that kind of confused me was that there wasn't really an explanation of what they were going to do with any post-adoption care, the camps, things like that. So for people like, other generations that were using it, still going to the camps and stuff, I mean, it's just like, now what? And they did send out a letter that said, here's some resources, here's some places that, that you can go to and look at these camps and these conferences and things like that. So they were trying to at least spread some more awareness, but it definitely seemed very abrupt. So,
yeah. Speaking of these camps and speaking of Dylan, another thing that I was wondering about was that, you said you yourself were able to attend the camps, and you had like a group of like 9 or 10 people, like adoptees, that you would kind of see throughout the year as well. And one of the things you realized was that your experience and story is a little bit different than others. What were your conversations like, and what was your kind of like initial reactions to hearing adoptees' experiences that didn't necessarily like align in the same way that yours did? And was that kind of like culture shock in a way, or was it just something that you were able to talk to your mom about? How were those conversations? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I think with that, because my brother and I had very different experiences with our adoption, with our emotions with adoption, I think that truly helped me be able to not be like, wait, what? Like, be ultimately shocked and stuff in front of someone. Just because that was, my brother and I were never able to talk about adoption growing up together. Just because that was something he just never wanted to talk about. So with my brother and I, without saying too much of his own adoption story, because that's his to share, there was a point in my life growing up where I had to draw the boundary between us. We were like 8 or 9, because he didn't want to be Asian. And so he'd say like rude things towards Asians, and be like, I don't want to be Asian. Like, all Asians are ugly. And I'm here as like an 8 or 9-year-old. He's 11 months younger than me, trying to learn what it meant to be Asian American in Texas with a brother that's also Asian, with 2 parents that are white, with me being an adopted female that's Chinese, therefore exotic. So it was just a lot of different things. So I was like, growing up was like, I'm never going to be in the same room with my brother if no one else is there. There was just a lot of boundaries that I created growing up with us, which ultimately harmed our relationship growing up, just because we're not that close. But I was able to really figure out my like adoptee identity then, instead of later on, and figuring out who I was as a person without the comments of how terrible Asians are, how ugly we look and stuff. And so I think growing up with that constantly in the house, I think I kind of like, when I heard other people tell me that they grew up differently, I was kind of like, oh, like I was like always wanting to hear it, just because I was always interested. Once I realized that it wasn't just Daniel and I having the same, it wasn't just like us being different, and having 2 different perspectives. And then it just got to be really interesting. And then really just being like, whenever other people ask me about adoption, being like, every person's like journey is their own perspective because of the experiences that they've had with adoption. And so
you're blowing my mind as an 8 or 9-year-old that you are drawing boundaries. And also, okay, so just to reiterate, you wrote this in your form, and I think you said it in our conversation, but just to reiterate, so you were adopted at 14 months, and then you grew up, and then you had a younger brother who is almost a year younger than you, but he was adopted much later in his life.
Yes, he was 6 years old. I was 7 when we adopted him. I was 7. He was 6.
Okay, so you were adopted at 14 months. He was adopted at 6 years old.
Yes.
And so you're over here trying to be like, 7 years old. And then like 2 years later, you're gonna be like, I'm drawing boundaries because we talked about that apparently. You're like, what? But your brother, who is 6, has this whole life and is basically, I mean, the equivalent is like he's a kindergartner basically, and from northern China. So, I mean, like that's like the distance of like Mexico City to Toronto, I guess. I don't know if that's accurate, but it feels like it's a large distance apart. And and so he's coming in as a 6-year-old, and now he's in brand new culture, already speaks a language and is having to learn English. Maybe speaks 2 languages, depending on if he had an indigenous language. And then he's also trying to figure that out. That is wild. And I want to talk to you about your podcast. But before we jump to that, do you remember what your 7 to 9-year-old self was wanting to talk to your brother about adoption, about being Asian American, about being Chinese? Because like so many of our guests and I think the 3 of us too, like we'll get asked like, oh, if you had a sibling who was adopted, did you ever talk to your sibling about being adopted? And typically the answer is no, because we were just trying to figure out how to be alive in America, and you're like, yes, actually, I was trying to talk to my sibling about it. So what were those early questions like? And did the questioning or the lack of conversation lead to the podcast that you have now?
I think that one of the questions that growing up, I've always struggled with like abandonment and stuff. And so I just like wanted to know that I wasn't the only one. And so I was like wanting to talk to him about that, just like about his experience in China versus mine. We grew up, once he talked about it a little bit more, once we were like, maybe he was like 13 or 14, we realized we were jealous of each other in different ways. He was jealous that I grew up in America, that my adoptive parents have baby photos of me and they don't have baby photos of him. He was jealous that I grew up in America and he didn't. And that I spoke English and that my life was easier than his. And then on the other side, I was jealous that he got to fully get to see the Chinese culture for 6 years. He got to talk with people. He got to see people. Growing up, he didn't have the I look different than them and having to like necessarily like watch his back, I guess, if that makes sense, for like bullying in the sense of American schools bullying. And so growing up, it was just like questions like that of like, what do you remember? Like, what did you see that I didn't see? What experiences did you have in, with like Chinese New Year festivals, things like that I was never able to see. And so it was really just questions like that. And then when I got older, it was more of just wanting to figure out, being like, are you also wondering the same questions I'm wondering? Do you have the same questions you'd ask your birth parents? So growing up, I always wanted to talk to him about all of these different questions, seeing if he also had questions he wanted to ask his birth parents, or was it just me? Just things I really wish I could talk to like a brother about that kind of went through the same thing as me, but also a little bit different. And so growing up, that was like hard realizing like that was never going to happen. And so over time I was like, okay, like I just can't talk about it. To the point where growing up, there'd be times where like I couldn't talk about being Chinese, being adopted in front of him because he didn't want to talk about being Chinese or adopted. So we had two different experiences, and growing up was kind of just realizing that was completely okay.
I appreciate you naming the okayness of it all, because I think that's something important for people listening to understand, is just how wildly different experiences can be under the same household, particularly in the circumstances of you and your brother, two wildly different adoption experiences of like literally ages of when being adopted. And I can totally, I guess not totally resonate, but I can see where it would feel maybe overwhelming to try and like have that conversation even from his perspective. And then from your perspective, feeling like this is like a connection that I can't have with anybody else that's right here under my own roof, and how that could feel overwhelming to not be able to get the type of answer that you want. And another thing that I wanted to name that you said that I think is important to call out is that I think for your specific experience outside of this relationship with your brother, you had, I mean, from what I've heard so far and heard you share, a fairly positive adoption experience overall. However, you did say at the beginning of this answer that you struggled with abandonment as like as an issue. And I think I just want to name that because you have like a really bubbly, magnetic energy. Like I like to listen to you speak and talk about your experience, and you just have really good energy. I've met you in person. You had the same energy there as well at when we were doing Noribong. But I just think that it's important for us to recognize, and particularly for adoptive parents to understand that just because the situation seems idyllic in whatever way you think that it is, the adoptee experience is much more nuanced. There is much more going on. There are many layers to said experience. And I appreciate you naming it because, I mean, just from your energy and just the parts of your story that you shared so far, I don't want people to get it twisted that it's like, oh, it's all sunshine and rainbows on your end, you know, as well. Like you still can struggle with things. You can still go through certain aspects of the adoptee experience that people would generally label potentially ungrateful, or, oh, you must be angry about that, or whatever the case may be. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I just wanted to name that because I think it's important.
Yeah, I think definitely like, although I have had a very positive adoption experience and everything, there's been so many emotions that like aren't what I guess, like what people might be considering like ungrateful and everything.
Sure.
Like one thing I always struggled with was that like, so when I grew up, I talked more to my parents about this and like fully told them about like this thing that they said to me whenever I was growing up. Growing up, I was told like, when we adopted you, you were the joy of the family. And so growing up for me, I was very like, okay, like I have to always be joyful. Like that's what my parents expect from me because that's what like they told me, that's just what I was. And so growing up, this was more of like end of high school, early college when I finally told my parents about this. My mom was like, no, yeah, that's not what we meant at all. And so my mom and I, so my like parents and I just like talked about like the reason behind it and everything and why they said that. So for me, it was kind of like, oh, like they said something, they didn't mean it that way, but my brain automatically took it that way. And so with that, like it was wanting to always impress my parents, even though like deep down, I knew they'd never abandon me. But at the same time, it was like, I've been abandoned once. My foster family didn't keep me. What's stopping these people from not abandoning me after I've gone through 2 families already? And I think a lot of that's just like, it's not talked about at all. It's not really like, that's not what people want to hear about like adoption and stuff. But even if you've had a positive experience with like my parents educating themselves, things like that, ultimately, like there's so many behind the scenes emotions and things regarding adoption that one still struggles with. Like I was not prepared for the grief of planning a wedding and dreaming of my adoption, like dreaming of my birth parents being at my wedding. I dreamed that since I was 4. And like, as time went on, I'm like, it's not happening. And so like, it was having to go through the grief of all of that was just one of the really difficult factors in it. And so like, that I just wasn't prepared for. And like we were talking about earlier, like I wasn't prepared for the changing the name, like my last name. It's literally been the hardest, like, I've been slowly changing it on different platforms, things like that. But But it's one of those, I'm like, this is the name that like I know for a fact I was given, and it wasn't just like here, like that they've given me from the orphanage. So there's just like so many complex emotions, and the struggles of being adopted literally just happen when you least expect it.
Yeah. And even though you may have like interpreted it in a specific way that your parents didn't mean, like it doesn't make it any less valid that you interpreted that way and then lived your life that way. And I just want to say it is effing exhausting to be the joy, to be the always on at all times, to be the happy person all the time. Like yes. I did that for so long. And I'm like, when I figured out that that's something I didn't need to do, I'm like, oh, this is why I get so absolutely angry at everything. It's like I just have to go the other way because I'm exhausted.
I can cry in front of y'all
from
now.
Being happy. Exactly.
Well, my wife still complains that she had to change her name from an Asian name to a German name. But yet I'm Asian. So
I don't think we ever talked about that.
So that's a whole thing. She's like, oh, I'm losing a little bit of my identity. That. Yeah, no, she almost kept it. There was a little hint that made her want to, but yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I went from a German last name Eisenhauer to a German last name Epp. So I'm wondering if there was also a cultural difference of a last name, if that would also be another layer of just like figuring out like, okay, so what now? Like when they hear my name, Cosette Eisenhauer, they don't think of someone that's Asian. But my husband is half Hispanic, half white. And so his mom's maiden last name's Garcia. So if it ended up being Garcia, they would also not be expecting someone that's Chinese when they hear if it was Cosette Garcia. So never know.
That just made me think of in middle school, there was a Hispanic student, and my first day of middle school, somebody asked me if I was that student's brother. I was like, do I look Hispanic? I'm like, I don't even know who that is.
Honestly, the way that people mistake non-white folks for each other is insane. I do not understand it.
Because you know Eskimo Joe's still in Oklahoma. It's on the way up to Tulsa. It's a restaurant, but I have a shirt. There are these famous shirts and it has a little Eskimo on it. It says, I wore that shirt and somebody asked me if I was an Eskimo.
You're kidding.
Like, I know.
Oh my God.
Are you Eskimo Joe?
I was like, this is a restaurant. And
also we're in Oklahoma.
Sometimes the idiocracy, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
People suck.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm trying to remember, but you brought up something. Oh, the grief of planning a wedding. I believe you wrote a little bit about that on the blog, Instagram. Did you share a little bit about that before?
Instagram, I did, yeah.
Okay.
I had three different parts that I did.
Okay. Well, I bring that up because not only have you been like doing this journey personally, but you started something, Navigating Adoption, that does a lot of work to amplify different experiences, talk about all of these things that's going on. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and clarify if you do or do not have a podcast.
Oh yeah, because I'm an idiot and I just always think that you have a podcast. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Well, okay, to answer the second question, I don't have a podcast.
All right, we got that one. Check that box. He's back in control of the soundboard.
That was what I felt when in our text thread they were like, "Wait, does she have a podcast?" It's not a podcast. It's actually what's up. I'm like, frick. My bad.
But yeah, so the other co-founder of Navigating Adoption, she also grew up in DFW in North Texas and everything. And so we've grown up together since we were maybe like 2 or 3. And so out of the group of us, we were always the two that were always talking to each other about the adoption experience, being like, hey, I'm feeling this way. Do you feel the same way, or is this just me? Like, just imagine I don't even know. Maybe like
I can't even imagine it.
I was trying to remember when I got my first phone, but like, just imagine I think I was like 13, me texting on like one of the brick phones or something and being like, hey, do you feel this way? I'm feeling really lonely and I don't know why. Like, my mom just left. I'm feeling so anxious. Like, things like that.
Sister.
And so just like talking about that. So we grew up going to like the FCC events, going to Dillon International Camp, China camps together. She wasn't adopted from Dillon, but my mom brought the heritage camps, I think, and explained it to FCC so that the people, like the parents there, knew about this camp. And I think that was back in 2005. I don't know. Before we hit 2010.
Pre-2010.
Yes. And so we kind of lost touch because after I hit a certain age, China camp just felt very redundant. And I really didn't want to go back to be a counselor. It was kind of when my brother didn't really want to go anymore. And so I was kind of like, yeah, I really don't want to be a counselor there because I'm learning a lot, but I really don't want to be like in charge of someone learning about it. And so we ended up stopped going to China camp for a couple of years. And then I was like maybe 13, 14. Zoe and I reconnected through Instagram out of the blue. We met up at Six Flags, talked about being adopted, and started the Instagram page at Six Flags.
Nice.
As one is wont to do. Six
Flags.
Flags.
Wow.
Yeah, so
You had a lot of time waiting in lines. I mean, it just makes sense.
it was on the log ride. Like, we definitely remember this. So it wasn't in the very beginning. In the very beginning, it wasn't navigating adoption. It was more of an account where we could openly talk about the struggles of being adopted in a space where like no one could judge us. So it was a private account.
Six Flags. That sounds like Six Flags. If I were to define
I'm not
a space to talk about the struggles of adoption where no one's going to judge us. Six Flags.
I'm not going to be able to get over Six Flags in this. Like, it's just so like such a deeply like local reference. I know there's Six Flags in other places, but just like, wow, wow.
You could have named it like the Six Flags of adoption or something.
Well, it used to be a place for adoption at first. So it was a private account.
Oh, okay.
It was a private account at first for like for like a couple of years. We were very selective on who could follow. If they were adopted, they could follow. If they weren't adopted, they weren't allowed to follow. We like didn't accept them. Just because we really wanted that safe space just to talk about being adopted and not feel like we were being judged by anyone. And then over time, we were like, okay, we should actually do this a little bit more after we talked about what we wanted to do about the account. And so then it ended up being navigating adoption and really just creating a space for other adoptees just to talk about their struggles in a safe space. And I think for me, it's allowed me just to become a lot more vulnerable. And I didn't realize, like in the beginning, never would have thought I would ever share a letter that I would ever send to my birth parents if I ever met them. But I did. So it just allowed me to become a lot more vulnerable and also be like, and just also share my emotions. And I think for me, it's just been really interesting with me just sharing how I'm feeling. Someone being like, oh, wait, that's what it is? Like, that's what that emotion is? I think it's like, it's really interesting seeing all of the journeys everyone's had and the perspective that we all have. And so that's pretty much with the account that we have. I know for me, when it was NAMM 2 years ago, I made it my mission to have us post literally every single day. And I got so burnt out from that. And like full maybe like couple of months struggled to get the momentum to get back up again. And then we because I never wanted to post because I felt like I had to post something. I always wanted us to be able to post because we wanted to, not because we felt like we had to, because that I'm like, what's the whole reason then if we feel like we have to do it?
Right.
And so that's why it's been a little bit more dead on the page, because we're going.
Speaking of dead, I just went to that page and I totally
Speaking
forgot
of
I was
dead?
on there. No, I died a little because I went to that page and I saw my photo and I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I did something.
So it's just been like, so Zoe is on a Fulbright scholarship in an Asian country. I really don't remember which Asian country.
She's gone.
I think it's Taiwan.
She could be at Six Flags. We don't know.
I think it's Taiwan. And so with me finishing up with like my bachelor's and then getting married, we were like, we made a post in the beginning like, hey, we're still here. We just like don't want to post because we have to. And it's just been like, it's really just been sweet seeing the community just be really gracious with us. Because in reality, it's two 22, 23-year-old girls running this page. And we have since we were like 13, 14. So
That's wild.
So you have for basically half of your lives. And I'm glad that you gave your age because I wanted to tell the listener that you are very young. Not that you just have like impressive.
Bro, we're all ageist on this show.
No. Because
Come on, I
like
want
if
you to
it
go the
was like,
opposite.
I mean, like I struggled to remember like 3 weeks ago,
no.
and Cosette's over here being like, "Oh yeah, here's what I was thinking about like at 8 and 9 years old." I'm like what? But like I think because you're young, it's easier to remember those even earlier ages. Whereas like if you're a little older, there's like that was like a very long time ago. But yeah, I think that the work that you do is incredible, and the way that you think is fascinating. And there's just been so much as you're telling your story. I'm like, man, this is like so many different circumstances that have allowed your brain to kind of open up this way beyond, you know, your natural giftings and how your brain is going to brain. But I'm curious, since you just recently got married, what were the conversations like around your spouse marrying an adoptee and about like having like that type of family structure, integrating into your own like family system, thinking about like the family that y'all want to have? Like, what were those conversations like? And I think we've had some of this, but I'm curious because you're just like so freshly in it and of it. Like, not that this would have happened, like, not that, you know, like he wouldn't have still been around before marriage, but like now it's official. Like, what have those conversations been like?
yeah, so I think from not pretty much after we got engaged, I think we started more of the conversation. No, it was when COVID happened and everything. I think.
Classic.
Was just talking about like, this is what's happening to me. This is how it's affecting me and everything. And just talking about how I just don't know. It's where I'm still learning what it means to be Chinese in America, let alone in Texas. And trying to figure out and navigate if I fit in, how I fit in, because that's always been something that I've struggled with. Was the moment someone hears my name and it's like an Asian group, they immediately turn away from me. And it's like, it's one of those weird things. It's like, I tried joining a college camp, like a college Asian club or something. And they immediately, like, they heard my name and the guy turned away from me and started talking to my friend who had an Asian name and being like, I don't know within kids wise, like how that's going to happen, because I'm like, I'm still figuring out what it means to be Chinese in America and really don't feel accepted by people that are Chinese. And so, but when COVID happened, it was kind of just talking about like the fears that I had with being Chinese in America. And then we kind of just like started the dialogue of growing up like Chinese but having white parents, and figuring out like when people like hear like my name and everything, they don't see someone that's Chinese, and like talking about the microaggression, just really opening like not the can of worms because it was a very civil conversation, but kind of just like talking about how I was feeling and him listening. And then kind of vice versa, because it was kind of him talking about like how he's Hispanic and he's half Hispanic, half white. He's bilingual in Spanish and English, but growing up for him, it was very like, stop trying so hard. Like, why are you trying to speak Spanish? And so it's kind of like, it was interesting seeing it from someone's perspective that wasn't adopted. And so the biggest thing that we've been talking about is like, so we do realize our kids will be half Chinese, a quarter white, a quarter Hispanic. And how's that one gonna go?
100% white, 100% Chinese, 100% Hispanic.
So it's just been trying to figure out things like that. So like one of the ways in our wedding, the table numbers, we had it's a table, and then in Mandarin, English, and Spanish, it had the table numbers in it.
That's dope.
And during rehearsal dinner, I wore a traditional Chinese dress. So it was just like, and Jordan, my husband, wore a Chinese shirt my dad got when we were in China adopting my brother. Yes. So it was just
deep
like
family ties,
trying to incorporate both cultures into one, starting from the wedding. And we had like a wedding newspaper. And in the wedding newspaper, when it had like people we wish could be here, it was pretty much everyone that had passed. I had a note to my birth parents and my foster parents there. Kind of just like just a little note about how I wish they were there, things like that. Who knows if anyone read it, but to me, I was like, they need to be a part of this somehow. And so I really don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think it's sorry, I'm going for that mute button. I mean, I just am so curious about like, especially knowing that your spouse also exists in that third culture space, and like having like a family that then is entirely third culture-y, I think is just really, really interesting. I love the idea of having a ofrenda / whatever the Chinese and like the Buddhist style, like here's my things, honor to my ancestors thing, like it's your wedding. It's in the newspaper format, but still that like the idea of here's 3 cultures that we're bringing together. Here's people that are important to us coming into this space. Yeah, I don't know. I could probably talk to you for hours, and I think I'm just going to put this out there. There's probably a world where you and I and Jennifer and Stephanie all have another episode and we talk about being Asian in Texas.
Bonus!
And not... Especially, so we just had Dr. Kim McKee on to talk about her latest book, which I think that you would be really fascinated in reading. And if that book taught me anything, I should just reiterated how much I should just shut up and listen. But I think that having you 3 on again and talking about that would be really interesting and something worth doing. So if you're out there and you're listening, give me a shout. I think we should probably transition to our snack, our drink that we can eat, if you will. So we're gonna do that. Here we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back with a snack.
Snacks.
Snacks.
Snacky time. Welcome back to the Janchi Show, snack time. We are here with another snack after a great interview. Cosette, I sent you one of these little chocolate boxes, and it's funny because it is not from Korea. However, it is a Korean company. So these are technically Korean, but this one was produced in Japan. So I don't know. Real confusing, right? But I learned something by researching this. Also, the name of this chocolate is Ghana. It's made by Lotte. But the reason they named it Ghana was because one of the world's largest exporters of cocoa beans is Ghana. So
that makes sense. Maybe they use Ghanaian cocoa beans to make this chocolate.
Possibly, but I will not. I don't know. I can't tell because everything is in Japanese on this
They
package.
spell hazelnut differently.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They spelled it with an E, H-E-Z instead of an H-A. Hazelnut. Yeah.
Hazelnut.
Could just be could just be a misspelling. But either way, I don't know. These looked good.
You're not allergic to any of this, are you, Cosette? Please don't die on our show.
I guess I should have asked if you were allergic to nuts. I didn't actually
We
see
do
that.
not have show insurance.
Yeah. I will not be giving these to my kids, but
yeah, I mean, when you fill the form out, you click some disclaimers at the end.
Anyone that's on the show,
from us.
anyone that's on the show, just now know if you die, it's on you.
If you die, it's on you. If you die, you die.
Yeah.
Can't do nothing about it.
Don't blame them.
So you're saying we should add a food allergy question on our intake form?
Probably.
I'm saying that if we don't have one on there already, we've messed up severely.
Yeah, I mean, we come this far without it.
Oh,
okay.
How many past guests have we not talked to? They might be dead.
Which way did y'all open this? Because there's two ways to open the box.
The really cool way.
Yeah, the fun way.
There is the cool way, but then there's also like the to-go way, which I don't understand.
Oh, I see.
Like it's perforated,
right
like on the side. You can open it from the.
Well, but on the top, when it has like the open, you can like put it down and it like latches.
So you could reseal it, I guess.
I guess
but it's in a sealed container on the inside.
Look,
so like,
you can just do this and you just pour them in there. It's a little tray. There you go.
Yeah, this is way too.
Now I got a little tray.
Honestly, the box, I know we're not recording video, but the box interior has a lot of cool stuff going on.
It's cool.
It does.
It's cool inside.
It's very like, Japanese anime kind of like.
I wish I could read it.
Yeah, I know.
I would like to know who is versusing who. Like, what's happening here?
Who versus who?
It's true. It says Ghana versus Ghana.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it looks like the same thing.
Chocolate nuggets.
Yeah. Well, from the outside, I was trying to figure out if it was going to be like crunchy or if it was going to be like soft.
What did you guess?
I think I chose crunchy.
This does look like it's about to be crunchy.
It is crunchy. It's crunchy delicious.
Oh,
wow.
Yep,
Wow.
Nathan, you knew what I'd be like. You knew what I'd be like.
I know it. I saw this and I was like, I don't care if it's from Japan.
Hey, I will say
like it.
The last two snacks that we've done started here, went down. So I don't want to get my hopes up too high. I'm about to eat this whole package.
I was gonna say I already ate the second one, and I feel like it's going up in rating for me. You know what these remind me of? How many of you have had the puppy chow? You know, the Chex Mix that's chocolate peanut butter coated.
Hi, Sarah.
So
shout out, voice of the show, cameo, voice of the show.
These remind me of Hello Panda.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yes.
Both.
That's a
little puppy
more,
chow.
Yeah.
Hello Panda. Churro, the turtle chips, the churro flavor. It reminds me of those because there's like a bunch of chocolatey goodness in that one. Just try some. Don't give me that look. Just try some.
Good.
These are good.
KJ, what does Sarah think of them? Or did she try it?
Out of 5?
4.
Gives it a 4.
4? I just spit everywhere.
Patrick's offended.
How dare you?
He was so offended he spit on his mic.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Apparently, this comes in 4. It comes in 4 other flavors: red, black, white, and beige.
What? Those aren't flavors; those are colors. Do you know how flavors work?
No, I get it. I feel you.
Yeah. So it's a chocolate variety, I guess, which I don't understand why the red is. Oh, red is just milk chocolate. So this one must be dark.
Wait, so this must be dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I like it so much. Yeah, because dark chocolate's the bomb.
The healthiest version. What's beige chocolate?
Would be
caramel
like white chocolate,
white?
right?
I don't know. Topo? Does it say
Topo?
Variety.
Color.
I don't. Nathan, do you know how flavor works?
No. I'm just going off the website.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump into my rating. I'm going to give it a. I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I can't fault it. It's pretty pretty intense. It's great because it's got like cocoa on the outside, like flaky, powdery goodness, and then whatever the interior is that gives it that crunch is good. And then the inside, it's that filling. That's I think where you get that like Hello Panda style like filling of chocolate. That's also delicious. So I think it's great. It's dark chocolate, which is also great. I just recently had randomly like a Kit Kat bar, which is milk chocolate, and
Love
did not
Kit
like it
Kats.
that much.
What?
Because it was milk chocolate. And I was like, man, anytime I go back to milk chocolate, I'm just like, this is not good chocolate. So 5 out of 5 for the dark chocolate. Ghana. I would actually argue it's probably just called like, Ghana Chocolate Biscuit. So thanks, Lotte, for this African/Japanese/Korean snack.
So this shouldn't be confused with that Ghana also, or Lotte also makes a Ghana chocolate bar. So these are...
Please don't confuse them.
These are little chocolate, like round nuggets, not the chocolate bars. So just to...
I would argue they're biscuits. You should probably
Chocolate
talk
biscuits.
with Lotte Marketing to say make it less confusing. Lotte's product marketing team at us.
But I
Don't
also give
at
it a
me.
5 out of 5. So this is delicious. I wish there was more, actually. That's the only thing that would make my rating above a 5 is if there was more in that package.
I actually just gave them to my wife, and she was like, she just took them. And she was like, oh, are you eating them now? And I was like, she was like, yeah. So can I have one more? And then Cosette, how many African continents do you give it out of 5?
Are there more than one African continent?
It has to be in this rating system.
Countries, I think.
Okay, I think I give it a 4.5 because I don't like how it kind of sticks to your teeth. Mine was kind of sticking to like the molars after I ate it, and that was the only reason why I'd like give it half a point under. But it's
in the
really
same
good.
way that like a goldfish might stick to your teeth.
Yes.
Not like anything.
Yeah.
Not like a fruit roll up would stick.
Not
to your
like
teeth.
something chewy. It's like how a goldfish sticks to the back of your molars.
Oh no!
Your dentist wouldn't be happy. So, all right, Patrick, bring it home.
I just went to the dentist the other day. I'm giving it a 5. This was a great snack overall. Got nothing else to say other than what everybody else has already said. I will say that if it's got chocolate in the name, I'm probably gonna like it. So it's 5 out of 5.
Especially if it's from Ghana. Yeah, no, this is
Why
good.
you gotta be like that?
What? It says they're the number one of the best exporters. So they know what they're doing.
He's offended.
You were just like, ChatGPT, give me some quick facts about chocolate from Ghana, just so I can spitfire them out on the show. We should do that.
Why would you do that? Oh.
You could ask me another chocolate exporter, and I would only know
Ghana.
Maybe the UK.
Okay. He's like, I thought you were about to rattle off like 3 of them. I'm not going to.
No, and I would only know all of them. Here we go. Ready? We got Switzerland. We've got UK.
Here we go.
Cadbury. Yeah.
Cosette, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A really great conversation interview and a really great snack portion. If people want to follow along with you, even though you're very busy right now, if they want to, where can they do so at?
We're mainly on Instagram. So navigating _adoption on Instagram. But right now my personal Instagram is Cosette Eisenhauer, which is spelled COSETTEEISENHAUER.
Got it.
Wow. Just imagine you're not going to have to do that anymore.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, we will have all of those things linked in the show. Those 2 things, I guess, linked in the show notes for people to follow. Remember, Navigating Adoption currently on a break, but they are still here. They both are doing amazing things, Zoe and Cosette.
It's not a podcast.
Again, it's not a podcast. Do not
we
look
post
for podcast
occasionally.
They post occasionally, but they are here doing the work. But really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure you, KJ, Stephanie, and
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
I knew it was a J name. Good friend of the show, Jennifer.
I saw your brain just like turning off. My
brain shut down in that moment. It's the chocolate. I went back. Found myself in Ghana just eating some good chocolate. I'm sure you guys are going to have a good conversation at some point in the future, hopefully on the show as a bonus episode. But until then, you can find us on all the social media platforms at Janchi Show. You can go to our website, janchishow.com, to see all the different cool stuff that we have on there, including catching up on all of our latest episodes. If you want to leave us a rating or review on any of those different platforms that you can find us on, wherever you get your podcasts, that would be great. We'd greatly appreciate that. If you want to send us a message outside of Instagram, you can do so via email to janchishow@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 972-677-8867. Got it on the first try. One verse, one hearse. Last but not least...
What?
One verse, one verse?
What?
One verse, one hearse, like one rehearsal.
Oh,
I only had to
wow.
rehearse it one time.
Oh, okay.
You know, a hearse is like what takes coffins to the gravesite.
Yeah, but
right?
it's an abbreviate. It's abbreviated to hearse. Anyways, if you want to hear more incredible abbreviations
so
from me,
hip.
you can find me at Patrick in the World wherever I want to be found on the internet.
Holla at me at KJ Roelke, please, and thank you.
Yeah. Holla holla. I'm and Nowak on Instagram and Nathan Nowak on Facebook.
Oh yeah, that's the one I always forget. Nathan is also manning
Still on
Janchi Show
Facebook.
After Party on Facebook.
I wouldn't consider it manning.
Nathan it does
I'm
exist
there.
on the same platform
It
where
does.
the After Party also exists. We gotta do something with that and take it off of there and do something different. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Or we won't.
Or we won't. Or we won't.
I'm still trying to put aprons on the website.
Okay. Well, at some point you will find aprons on the website. Cosette, thank you so much again for being here. And for everybody else, until next week, Janchi.
Hey, hell.